Here's August 2014, questions 33 to 37. Number 33, on the axis below, graph f of x equals absolute value of 3x. So what you could do is you could type this into your graphing calculator, y equals, okay, and then remember you'd have to hit the absolute value sign before you type in 3x. And what you're going to do is hit the math key and scroll over to num, and it should be the first option, which says ABS for abs, and you'll hit enter. Okay, when you do that and you look at your table, you will see a pattern, and here are the choices I chose to do for the numbers. I went from -2 up to +2, and my y value at -2 was 6, then 3, 0, 3, 6. And if you didn't have a graphing calculator, what you could do is just plug in your x value into the equation and you'll end up with your y value. So if I plug in -2 in for x, 3 times -2 is the absolute value of -6. And remember, inside the absolute value, it turns the number into a positive number. So if it was negative, it changes to a positive. If it was positive, it just stays positive, okay? So now I can graph, and when I do that, I'll start -2 on the x and go up 6 on the y. So right about there. -1, +3, 0, 0, 1, 3, 2, 6. And when I connect those dots, you will use a straight edge so that you have a nice straight graph, and it will look like a V. Absolute value graphs always look like a V, as opposed to parabolas from quadratics will look like a U. Okay, so here are the questions below. If g of x equals f of x minus 2, how is the graph of f of x translated to form the graph of g of x? Well, if you remember your rules, you're subtracting 2 at the end. That means it's going to shift down 2 units. It's a vertical shift down. If it's inside the parentheses, like h of x, so it's f of parentheses x minus 4, that's a horizontal shift, and it's going to shift, in this case, 4 units, but this is to the right. Okay? Number 34, the formula for the area of a trapezoid is A equals 1/2 h times b1 plus b2. Express b1 in terms of a, h, and b2. So what you want to do is you want to essentially get b1 alone. So first I'm going to get rid of the fraction. The opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2, or you could think of it as the LCD. The only denominator that we have is 2, so the least common denominator is still just 2. So if I multiply everything by 2, I multiply this whole thing by 2, okay, because this is 1 unit, and then I multiply the other side by 2, so I'm left with 2a equals, the 2's cancel out over here, and I'm left with an h times b1 plus b2. The next step I need to do is get rid of this h. Opposite of multiplying by h is to divide by h, so I'm left with 2a over h equals b1 plus b2. I can drop the parentheses because there's nothing outside of the parentheses now that needs to be multiplying. Okay, last step. To get b1 alone, I need to subtract b2 from both sides. And so I'm left with 2a over h minus b2 is equal to b1. Okay, so this is my final answer up top. The area of a trapezoid is 60 square feet. Its height is 6 feet, and one base is 12 feet. Find the number of feet in the other base. Well, let's just plug it into our formula that we just used. So we could use this formula up top, and we have 2 times area. Remember, area is 60 divided by our height, and our height was 6, minus one of the bases, which is 12, should equal our other base, b1. And if I type this in, well, 60 times 2 is 120, divided by 6 would give us 20. So that's 20 minus 12 gives us our b1. So that means that 8, and we're talking about feet, is what our base 1 will equal. 8 feet. Number 35, let f of x equal negative 2x squared and g of x equal 2x minus 4. On the set of axes below, draw the graphs of y equals f of x and y equals g of x. Okay, let's start with f of x. F of x is going to be a parabola, and it's going to look like an upside down u, and I know that because it's negative 2x squared. So because of that negative, I know it's going to be flipped upside down. Because of the square, I know it's going to be a parabola. And if I type this into y equals, and I look at my table on my graphing calculator, I will see a pattern, and that pattern is going to be from negative 2 to 2, and it will be the y values negative 8, negative 2, 0, negative 2, negative 8, 0, 0 is my vertex. So let me plot those points. So negative 2, negative 8, 1, 2. Right about here. Negative 1, negative 2, 0, 0, 1, negative 2, and 2, negative 8. So when I connect those dots, it's going to look like an upside down U. Okay, and since I'm going to have more than one equation, I'm going to label. So this is my f of x graph. Okay, let's try graphing the g of x. G of x is a straight line. I could type it in, but I could just do it by hand. So I know that my b value is negative 4. That's where I'll start. And I know that my slope m is a positive 2. And if I wanted to put it as a fraction, it would be 2 over 1. So let's start with negative 4 on the y-axis, right here. And what I'm going to do is have a slope of up 2 over 1. So here's my first intersection point. And if I go down 2 and to the left 1, I'll have another intersection point right here. And then you'll use a straight edge or a ruler just to connect the dots with a straight line. And we'll label this as g of x. Okay. Using this graph, determine and state all values of x for which f of x equals g of x. So we only care about the x values. So the x values where these two graphs are equal would be, let's see, negative 2 is right here. That's our x value in this point. And our other x value where the two graphs intersect is at x equals 1. So those are your values. Number 36. A school is building a rectangular soccer field that has an area of 6,000 square yards. Underline that. The soccer field must be 40 yards longer than its width. Determine algebraically the dimensions of the soccer field in yards. Okay, well we know that L is going to represent our length, and we want W to represent our width. So our area, 6,000, is equal to our length times our width, because area always equals length times width when you're talking about a rectangle. And the soccer field must be 40 yards longer than its width. So that's talking about the length must be equal to 40 yards longer. That means more than, and you're adding to its width, W. So now if we just have a substitution problem, we're going to take our W plus 40 and we're going to substitute it in for L. So I'm going to have width, this one width right here is going to multiply our width plus 40, and it's going to all equal 6,000. Okay, now I'm going to distribute, and I'll have W squared plus 40W, and I'm already just going to subtract 6,000, and it all equals 0 because I want everything equal to one side. So whenever you end up with a square, you want to set everything equal to 0 so that you can then use either the quadratic formula or factoring. Okay, so I'm going to use factoring to do this, and or not factoring, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. I think that would be easier. So I need to find my A, my B, and my C before I plug it into the formula. A would be 1, it's the number in front of your x squared, or in this case w squared. B is the number in front of your variable w, so that's 40. And C is the number without any variables, so that is negative 6,000. You need to remember the negative. So I'm going to plug it into the quadratic formula, and instead of x equals, I'm going to have w equals. So w will equal a negative b, so negative 40, plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's 40 squared. I'm going to put it in parentheses just because we should be used to doing that, especially when there's a negative, so that our calculator can calculate correctly. Minus 4 times our a value of 1 times our c value of negative 6,000, all divided by 2 times our a value of 1. So it equals negative 40 plus or minus the square root of 25,600, all divided by 2, which equals negative 40 plus or minus, well, the square root of 25,600 is 160, all divided by 2. So then I'll have two options. One will be negative 40 plus 160 divided by 2, or the other option is w equals negative 40 minus 160, all divided by 2. Well, this over here gives us an answer of w equals 60 yards, and this one gives us an answer of w equals negative 100. But we can't have a negative 100 width, so our width is going to be 60 yards, and then to find the length, we can just plug it into our formula. Our length formula is w plus 40. Well, 60 plus 40 is 100, so our length is 100 yards and our width is 60 yards. Number 37. Edith babysits for X hours a week after school at a job that pays $4 an hour. She has accepted a job that pays $8 an hour as a library assistant working Y hours a week. She will work both jobs, and she is able to work no more than 15 hours a week. Due to school commitments, Edith wants to earn at least $80 a week working a combination of both jobs. Write a system of inequalities that can be used to represent the situation. Well, we know that she can't work more than 15 hours, so that means we have to add our hours together. Our X, which represents, let's see, the hours babysitting, plus Y, which represents the hours at the library, and no more than would be less than or equal to 15. That's one inequality. The other one, talking about money, well, she makes $4 a week babysitting, 4x, plus $8 a week, or $8 an hour, sorry, they're both per hour, as a library assistant, Y, and she has to earn at least greater than or equal to $80 a week. Now we just have to solve for Y and then graph. So to get Y alone over here, we're going to subtract X, and we're left with Y is less than or equal to negative X plus 15. And over here, we'll subtract 4X from both sides, and we'll get 8Y greater than or equal to negative 4X plus 80, divide by 8. Y greater than or equal to negative 1/2 X plus 10. Okay, now we know that the X is talking about hours, this is babysitting, and we know that the Y is talking about hours at the library. So now I'm just going to plot my points. Okay, so I plotted my points. I shaded below for the less than or equal to, shaded above for the greater than or equal to, and here is my solution set where the both of the shading occurs. Now if I look at this last part of the question, determine and state one combination of hours that will allow Edith to earn at least $80 per week while working no more than 15 hours. I just pick a point in my solution set. So I can pick like 2 hours babysitting and 11 hours at the library. And that would be the point 2, 11, which when I look back, 211 is right here. So that's in my solution set.